Well, here we are in the arcade again. We're waiting for Hurricane Sandy to pass by, and it's raining pretty good outside, so we figured it was time to get in the arcade because it's been a mess out here. I've been working on some games and making some changes, and figured it was time to get out here. And since we can't go outside, which I have plenty of work out there to do, but we also have work in the arcade, so good a time as any. Today we have my Asteroids game, and it has Scott's Multigame Asteroids Deluxe and Lunar Lander installed, and I have the thruster interface and a thruster for it. So today what we're going to do is we're going to remove the control panel and install a brand new control panel, which was just made by Takeman, and they're really first quality. Anything, if you ever bought anything that he's made, he has quality stuff, and he's a perfectionist, and he gets the job done right, and this panel is no exception. Also, we have the new designed overlay for the Asteroids Multi Game. Now, I guess several people were involved in this, but Rich from This Old Game took the lead on it and actually produced it, and it's another quality overlay. So now we're going to go ahead and pull the old panel off, and this would be quick and simple if I just swapped the wiring harness over. Haven't decided if I'm going to do that. I do have everything to build a new wiring harness, new buttons, new switches. But I'm going to pull it apart and we'll see how it goes. So first step is take the old control panel off of the Asteroids. Now, for those of you that have never been inside an Asteroids cabinet, you go in through the coin door. Hey, look at that. Lunar Lander, thruster, and the coin box. Okay. So that's what we're going to use, and of course that's the Asteroids board, along with Scott's Multigame and Doug's production run he made for the analog to digital converter. So what we have to do now is up under here, if you can see it, should have some wing nuts and washers, one on each side, and we take those loose, and the control panel is hinged. So once you take those loose, we can fold it out. Then we'll have to take the bolts loose to take the panel off of the cabinet. All right, well, I removed the wing nuts, but didn't have any washers on them. A lot of times they'll have a big washer on them, but it seemed to work okay because the bracket is slotted. But anyway, we'll go ahead and close the coin door back up. Now we ought to be able to just pull this panel, and it should come forward right on the hinge. And you can see here's a piano hinge, and it has 4 carriage bolts, actually 3 carriage bolts. So we have to take those 3 carriage bolts loose, and then we can drop the panel off. Plus we have a Molex plug that we just need to unplug, and then the control panel will come apart in one piece. And as you can see on the new control panel, It already came with the hinge with the square holes for the carriage bolts, so it'll be a direct bolt up. But before we do that, we're going to have to apply the control panel overlay and install the buttons in the harness. So that's what we're going to do next. Well, I think I got it figured out now. I have the overlay just laying on top of the new control panel. I moved it around in position, and I have 3 clothespins on each side, sort of holding it in place. Now, this allows you to tweak it a little bit and move it around till you get the final position. After I get the final position, I'm probably going to reinforce it a little bit by putting some packing tape on the edge and flipping it around to keep it, you know, from sliding around, because you don't want it sliding around while you're applying it. The way I got this to line up was, and the only way I could figure it out, was a suggestion that Rich gave, was to put a light under the panel, and you can see the light where it comes through the white on the control panel overlay, and you can also see it through the red. So what I did was, I figured it would be best to line it up with the start buttons, and what I did was I took a pencil and drew a line right from this arrow to this arrow. I figured that would be a good point for the center of the button, and of course these arrows should line up to the button, but they're actually off a little bit. They're not direct center. So what I did was line the center line up on this line, and then just took a measurement from the outer edge of the hole to the arrow on both sides, and even it up so that I have the same spacing between the 2 arrows. And this, of course, when you put your button on top, it's going to have the button a little bit high on the white here, but if you go over here and look at the original Asteroids panel, it's the same way. The top edge of the button is closer to the top edge of the white than it is the bottom, and they're lined up with the center. So I figured that would be a good starting point to line up the panel. Once you get these 2 measurements and the overlay centered, then the rest should fall into place. So then what I did was, I took a pencil again, and I drew a line. Camera don't want to focus. There we go. I drew a line from here straight down to here to get the center of that button, and one on the red I did the same thing. So once I had it lined up with the start buttons, then I went under here, and it's not quite centered, but it's close enough on both sides, and they're centered from side to side, so that's well within tolerance. And these aren't going to be exact anyway. If anybody's ever tried to recreate artwork, you know that it's very challenging to get everything lined up to where it will perfectly line up with the panel, because you've got so many variables. The panels, even though they're made, probably these are made at the same place, they probably weren't all made in the same day, maybe, and unless they made a template or some type of jig to put them in, the holes might not be in the exact same spot. I'm sure they're close, and like I say, within tolerance, but these seem to line up just fine. I don't see any problem at all with the panels or the overlay. What you have to make sure, though, is to get get it lined up and get it centered, because if you don't, once you stick it down, what will happen, if you get it a little bit off to the right or to the left, once you start sticking this down, you're going to find out as you go down the length of the overlay and it sticks, it's going to get a little cocked, and you're going to have either not enough covering the panel, or you're going to have overhang on the other side. So it's very important, and I can't stress this enough, to make sure you get it lined up, the right side and the left side. Now it seems like I may have to trim a little bit off of both sides, a little bit more maybe on this side than the other side, but that's good, because it's best to have a little bit of overhang than to have it too short and then have a gap on the side. So like I say, this should go very well. So once we get it stuck down into place, then we can come back with the X-Acto knife and cut out for the buttons. Now once you're sure you got it lined up perfectly, you want to make sure and check it again. You can't check it too many times, because once you stick this stuff down, it's stuck and you can't do nothing with it. So our main lineup marks is the start buttons. They're perfect. That looks good. And smooth it down on the edge of the bend here. I got a little overhang there. Got a little overhang here. Up here, I have the same amount of overhang. So that means I should have this straight. So it should be ready to go on. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take some packing tape. Alright, now take the packing tape and just cut a little piece off here. Now one little trick with the packing tape, if you take one end and fold it over like that, you'll create a little tab where it makes it easy to pull back off, because this is just temporary to hold it in place. So we're going to put it, smooth it on good and tight on the top edge of the panel, and then turn it under and put it right on the bottom edge. That's going to hold it in place and keep it from sliding and misaligning while we try to apply it. Now that should stabilize it. And before we do anything else, take a light and we'll check it one more time. It looks like it's still in place. Good to go that way. Got a little overlap on both sides there. Overlap here. Smooth it down, roll it down. We have overlap there. And a little bit overlap there. So we should be good to go. Well, now that I have it centered where I want it, what we're going to have to do now is pull this up, and what I need to do is cut the backing paper along this edge, because I want to start sticking it on this flat part of the top, and that way I can work my way down to the bottom. Once we put that on, then I can come back, untape the top here, pull the other side back, peel the backing off of it, and then stick down to the top side. The only thing is, I could take a razor knife and score this and tear it off, but I'm scared that I might cut into the overlay itself, because This is I believe the way this is silk screen on the back side of it. So it was started out as a clear piece of plastic, and then everything was silk screened onto the bottom side of it. And of course the black is silk screen too, I believe. Now I could be wrong, but I believe that's the way it's done. But anyway, I don't want to risk cutting into that, so I think what I'm going to do is pull this up, start peeling this backing off. And once I get it started here, take a clothespin, and I'm just going to pin it down to hold it until I get this backing loose. Now I'm going to take the scissors and cut it. Let's take this loose here. Start in the middle and work your way back towards the edge. This is the tricky part. You want to make sure that you stick it down very, very slowly without getting any air bubbles trapped under it. Plus you don't want this to drop down and stick in a position you don't want it in. Now we can take our clothespins off. And we can peel our tape off. still have a difficult part coming up here, and it's mainly this bend right here. This bend is going to be a little tricky trying to get this in, but because we did it this way, we'll have the backing on, so the backing won't stick to it prematurely, because we're going to pull the backing off as we lay it down. So next what we do is make sure we don't have anything on the panel that can get caught between the adhesive. Pull this back a little bit, get this edge from where we cut it off a while ago. Peel it back a little bit and let it fold under like this. And as we hold it up, and that keeps it from sticking prematurely. So what we need to do is just make sure we get it good right on this edge, because this is the edge where a big cutout is for the controller. And we can start grabbing this in the middle, pulling it back as we go. Just pulling it a little at a time, taking that time and rubbing it down. Starting to center and work to the edge. Here we have nothing under the panel, so we have to just work on this little, the end piece right here. Pull a little bit more back. More. Okay, now we're back onto the solid panel all the way across. Now we're getting closer, so you can see closer to that bend in the panel. And this is a pretty thin control panel material, so it ought to bend in the groove fairly easy. And unlike the control panel overlay that I got for the Asteroids quite a few years ago, Arcade Renovations made that one. That one was a little thicker, and it had a wrap over. It actually wrapped over, and I could put it on the back side here. This one here seems to be cut so that it just comes even with the lip, which is fine. It should be fine, no problem there. Actually, probably a lot easier. You won't have to worry about trying to bend it over that lip. So there we have it. All we have to do now is take a razor knife, cut out for our 4 buttons here and 2 buttons here, and then since this is trimmed flush on the edge, I was thinking about cutting like an X in here and folding it over and letting it come underneath the bottom, because the thruster installs from under the bottom. It doesn't bolt onto the top. It comes in from the bottom. But I think because this is such thin material and it's flush everywhere else, I think I'm just going to go ahead and cut it flush with the hole in the panel. And I think that would probably be the best way to do it. So let's set up and get ready to do that next. Okay, first I'm going to start with cutting out for the thruster. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to take a wide X-Acto blade, since this is a large area to cut out, and right here we're just going to take and pop through and cut over to where the edge is here. And then we're just going to follow the edge. Now to make it cut a little easier, of course the knife is on an angle. So when you cut, and you want to keep your blade on an angle to it. and sort of down, so that it's pushing down so it doesn't try to pop it up. So let's find the edge again. Now for the holes. Might be best. Let's see, turn it over. Might be able to cut the holes out better from this side. So let's give one a try. This I'll take the smaller X-Acto knife, since we got a much smaller hole to go around here. I wonder if I should put it on something where I could cut into to make it flat. Let's see. That might help. That way I won't be pushing down on it. Alright. Alright, now let's get the two small holes where the start buttons go. Again, we'll use our small X-Acto blade. And we'll pop it up from the bottom side. And just run our blade tip around the outer edge of the hole. Do it for the other one. And that takes care of those. Now we have to do the other small square holes here, and we'll just punch up from the bottom, cut straight along all four sides. Now we got left are the four square holes for the lunar lander thruster. Alright, that completes all the holes. Now we have a little bit of an edge right along here we need to trim off. So let me see if I can trim that. Alright, and that is basically it. And we're all ready to install the buttons and the thruster. Okay, well, I've decided that since I'm not going to use the original Asteroids panel for the time being, because I'm turning this into the Multigame with the thruster, instead of wiring up a new control panel harness, I'm just going to go ahead and use the same harnesses on this one. So we need to go ahead and take the 3 carriage bolts out that holds the control panel on, and the one in the middle here has the ground wire on it, so we want to make sure we put that back when we put the new panel on. We'll go ahead and remove these bolts and take the panel off and set it next to the new panel and start transferring the harness over to the new panel. Okay, now we got the panel off and both of them are on the table, the new panel and the old panel. When I built this harness, I put all new buttons and everything on it, and I labeled everything. F for fire, T for thrust. Up here I got left and right, and of course the middle one there is for the hyperspace. And then of course right here on the start buttons I have 2 little marks for number 2 and 1 mark for number 1, so it's all pretty straightforward, so I won't get them mixed up. I just go ahead and start taking the nuts off of the buttons and removing the harness, and then I'll just transfer everything over to the new panel. I also have to transfer these lockdown bolts. They're carriage bolts, and it has a little plastic spacer. Some panels use a piece of wood in between the buttons, and it wouldn't have this spacer. I'm not sure if all asteroids have the spacers. I know lunar landers, I think, have a piece of wood for the spacer, but I believe I've seen some asteroids that also had the wood, but this panel doesn't. It just has spacers. I don't know if that was factory or somebody had added that to it, but we're just going to transfer it over to the new panel, and if I ever use this panel again for an asteroids, then it won't be no problem to recreate that and to build a new harness and all. I have new buttons and everything, so we'll just leave that for another time. Okay, I went ahead and got a new set of buttons, even though the ones I had were new 10 years ago, but I'm going to use the same holders because I already have the wiring harness wired up. So, and of course I'm going to use the Atari start buttons because you just can't get them anymore. You can find them used, and sometimes you can run into somebody that has some new old stock. I have some here, but they're boxed away and I just don't have time to look for them right now. So I'm going to go ahead and just put these right back on, since I'm not going to use the Asteroids panel now. So we'll start by putting player 1 back in place. Now, there's no way to grab the cone real good to turn them, so what I like to do is go ahead and line them up, tighten them up, leave it on a little bit of an angle, get the button as tight as you can get it, the cone, and then twist, hold the cone and twist the button, and that way it tightens up pretty good. So let's put player 2 in here. They don't have to be super tight. You just want them so they're not going to wobble out. And that ought to be good enough. Okay, now, since the start button's in the same place, but the main buttons have been moved over to the side, the harness, because I created this for the other panel, I believe everything is going to reach. Maybe a little stretch, but I believe it'll work out pretty good. So let's go ahead and put the first one on, which this one is marked right, and this is the right controller. And the only other thing I see is the Asteroids panel, the holes are cut out. It has the little notch on either side, and the buttons have this little plastic piece that's supposed to fit in the notch. Well, since the notches aren't there, the buttonholes are a little bit bigger and they have room, but they still don't quite fit all the way down. But I believe when I compress it, I believe it will go down and it'll be okay. But we're going to check that out too. Pretty much tighten these down by hand, but I like to put a wrench on them and just give them a little tweak, and it appears it pulled down just fine, so it's not going to be a problem with the little notches. Should keep everything out the way. Kind of a tight install there because, like I say, this harness was made for a standard Asteroids, and I put the buttons on the panel first and then wired everything up to it. But that should work pretty good. Now I'm going to get some of those little sticky pads and put some K-straps on here to hold the wires in place, and then the next thing we're going to do is put the thruster in. But I think I'm going to bolt it up to the game first, since my thruster wire is already hooked up. All I have to do is just put it in the panel here and put the 4 bolts in it, and it'll be much easier to do with it with the hinge already mounted on the game. So let's do that next. Alright, now we're going to secure the wires on the panel here with some of these mounting bases, which are made with double sticky tape on the back, and you use a tie strap. Tie strap just goes through it, and it'll hold your wire harness on the panel. So let's go ahead and install a couple of these to hold that wire harness in place. And we're going to put one right here. hold that in place. And let's put another one. Let's see. We'll put it down here to make sure it's out of the way of any of the braces here. That's my only other concern, is how close this is going to be to that mounting brace. It's possible we may have to reroute it or keep it as close to that as possible. So I'm going to keep it as close to that as I can, because it looks like it's going to be close. Because I doubt anybody has ever checked to see what the clearances are. I don't know if anybody has already installed one of these panels or not, but let's give it a try and see what happens. Keep it as close to that button as I can, and if it does come too close, I hope the button's not in the way. That would be a problem. I might add another one to that so I can tighten it up a little bit. Okay, now as long as we've got clearance, because that's what worries me, that bracket is right on the edge of that, but I believe it's going to clear it okay, but it's going to be close. So let's take it over to the game and bolt it up with the carriage bolts and see what kind of clearance we have. Okay, we got good news. The panel is bolted up onto the Asteroids cabinet, and I've checked underneath here, and it's close, but it's plenty of clearance, no problem at all for the buttons, for the mounting bracket. So everything is looking good so far. So now what we need to do is open this back up, and I'm going to bolt on the thruster, and then we'll pretty much be finished. So let's go ahead and we'll open it up here and get that thruster out. Alright, well, the thruster mounts from underneath the panel. So what we're going to have to do is we'll start here, put one of the carriage bolts through the front side. We'll start on the top, and you have to get it through both the plastic bezel and the metal plate that the control panel mechanism is mounted on. And we'll start by putting both of the top ones in. Now, I'm one bolt short, and I'm going to get some new bolts anyway. These have rusted. I could probably wire brush them up and clean them up, but I want to get some and powder coat them. So for the time being, I'm just going to put 3 of the old ones back in. The 4th one from the original Lunar Lander panel, where I got the controller from, is still in the Lunar Lander controller panel, because I figured if I kept one with it, and if I ever decided to get another thruster and put the Lunar Lander panel back in operation, I would have one of the bolts to go by. So as a matter of fact, this isn't the bolt for that. So I only got two bolts. I got two bolts out there. Alright, so I'll just have to take one of these out and put one on the top and one on the bottom for the time being, until I can get me some more bolts. So let's go ahead and put one on the bottom. And that'll be good enough to hold it until I can get some new ones and get them powder coated. And because we're tightening up on plastic there in between, no need to over tighten them. I have lock nuts. And I'll probably put a stress relief on this cable. So get one of those in a tie wrap. And let's figure out the best place to put this. I would say right up here by the pot. Give it a good open area for it to hang from. Give it a bit of extra slack here. Alright, plug the control panel harness back in. And now, here we have basically the finished product, except for the two bolts I'm missing. And like I say, I'm going to get some new ones and powder coat them. And I'm going to do the same thing for the bolts up here. But basically, it's all together. I now have a thruster, Lunar Lander thruster, on an Asteroids Multi Game with the new control panel and a new button layout. It ought to work real nice. So we only got one other thing left to do now. Fire it up and play a game and see how it works. Alright, we're ready to try it out. Have it plugged in. Have all my games on the X10 remote system. So let's go ahead and turn it on. And there we have it coming up. I believe I have it set up to come up in Asteroids, because it was originally an Asteroids cabinet. And right now it is set on free play. I did that just for testing purposes, but I generally like to keep everything in my arcade set up for tokens. But for now, let's try a game of Asteroids. Hyperspace works. Okay, everything seems to be working, so all my controls are still functional. let's go ahead and switch to the next game by pressing both of the buttons at the same time, I believe. And this should be Asteroids Deluxe. And there it is. Alright, well, this was the main reason for this conversion in my opinion. Let's go ahead and Lunar lander on Asteroids. Okay, this will be the first time with the new panel. So let's start a game. And the thruster is working great. Let's try for a 5X here. And we have landed. Okay, well, I'm very happy. I still have a little bit of restoration to do to the cabinet. Have a little water damage around the bottom edges there, and need little touch-ups here and there. I'm going to try to touch up around the edges for the T-molding and put new T-molding on. I'm going to strip down the brackets here. Marquee brackets would have a little rust on them. Repaint those. But the main project is done now. Have a working Asteroid Deluxe and Lunar lander with a complete control panel solution. Takeman did an excellent job on the panel as always. Rich did an excellent job on the control panel overlay. It looks great. And Doug did a great job on the analog to digital converter, which lets you interface the thruster with Scott's Multigame. And of course Scott, excellent job, well done on the Multigame kit. Now we can only hope that Scott has time to finish doing what is tweaking on the board, and even though he has quite a few of them he's put out there for beta testing, I would love to see a wide release, because I believe this is just a fantastic addition to any Asteroids cabinet, and he's also working on one for Asteroids Deluxe. So I hope that comes to pass real soon, and thank everybody for watching my videos. Try not to, I know they're kind of boring, but hopefully there's some helpful little hints in there that'll help you while you're working on your own games. So for now, till the next video, that's it. Have a good day.